The Dark Ages, a time when kings waged war, famine struck the land, and faith guided daily life. Within the thick stone walls of monasteries, monks followed a rhythm unlike any other: prayer, labor, and simple meals. But what, truly, did they eat? For monks, food was never luxury. It was necessity, discipline, and devotion. Every meal was eaten in silence. While the brothers sat in rows, one monk read aloud from scripture. So, even while chewing bread, their souls were fed by words. Their rules came from the Rule of Saint Benedict, written in the 6th century. This sacred text guided not only prayer and labor, but also the very diet of a monk. Moderation was demanded. Food was measured, nothing in excess. A monk was allowed about a pound of bread each day. Alongside it came 2 simple dishes, often beans, lentils, or vegetables pulled fresh from the monastery gardens. Meat from 4-legged animals was forbidden. Monks believed it stirred passions of the body and distracted the soul. Instead, they relied on grains, vegetables, cheese, and occasionally fish. Fish was permitted not as indulgence, but survival. Rivers near monasteries were stocked with carp, eels, and trout. For coastal abbeys, the sea provided herring and cod, salted to last through harsh winters. Wine was allowed, but only in small measure, a half pint a day diluted with water. Too much, Benedict warned, would lead to sin. In some monasteries, ale replaced wine, brewed by the monks themselves. On feast days, the rules relaxed. Meals might include eggs, fresh cheese, and a little more wine, but even celebration was restrained, a quiet joy rather than a feast of indulgence. The daily rhythm of meals was strict. Dinner was taken in the late morning. Supper, lighter, was served in the evening. In summer, 2 meals. In winter, only 1. For many monks, hunger was a companion. Fasting was common, not only for holy days, but as discipline for the body. To deny the flesh was to strengthen the spirit. Yet monks were not starving. Their gardens supplied vegetables in abundance: onions, leeks, cabbage, turnips, peas, and beans. Carefully tended plots kept hunger at bay. Fruit, too, played a role. Apples, pears, and plums grew in monastery orchards. In autumn, monks dried them for the long winter months. Herbs were prized not only for flavor, but for medicine. Mint, sage, parsley, and dill, planted in cloister gardens, used to heal the body as much as to season the stew. Bread remained the cornerstone of the diet, thick, dark loaves made from rye or barley. In wealthier monasteries, wheat was used, a luxury grain reserved for special days. Cheese provided protein, soft, fresh curds for daily use, and aged wheels stored in cool cellars. Milk from monastery cows or goats was rarely drunk, instead transformed into cheese and butter. Fasting days often replaced meals with gruel, a thin porridge made of oats or barley boiled in water. It filled the stomach, but barely. Salt was precious. Monasteries near the sea harvested it by hand. Inland abbeys traded for it, preserving fish and vegetables through the long, cold months. During Lent, the diet grew even stricter. No dairy, no meat, no eggs, only bread, vegetables, and water. For 40 days, monks endured hunger as a form of devotion. The act of eating was not only about food, it was about obedience. Every bite reminded the monk that he was not living for himself, but for God. This was the monk's table, simple, plain, humble. Yet in that simplicity lay strength. For in the Dark Ages, when hunger ruled the land, the monastery remained a place of order, discipline, and survival. Fish was more than food. It was a symbol. Christ called his apostles fishers of men, and so the eating of fish became sacred in its own way. Monks saw their nets as both livelihood and devotion. On Fridays, when the flesh of warm-blooded animals was forbidden, the monastery kitchens filled with the smell of boiling fish, seasoned lightly with herbs. No butter, no cream, just salt, thyme, and water from the well. But not all monks lived near rivers or seas. Inland abbeys relied on ponds. Many monasteries dug their own fish ponds, careful systems that could keep carp or trout alive year-round. It may sound simple, even dull, but in an age of famine and scarcity, fish ponds were an ingenious technology. They were life insurance, a way to guarantee food when crops failed. The bread, though plain, had its own ritual. It was broken, not sliced, shared, not hoarded, a reminder of Christ's body, of humility. Each bite tasted of both hunger and holiness. Some abbeys grew wheat, others relied on barley or rye. In hard years, bread might be dark, dense, almost bitter. Still, the monks gave thanks, blessing even the roughest crusts. Wine, too, was part of the daily ration, though sparingly. The rule of St. Benedict allowed half a bottle a day, enough to warm the spirit but not enough to cloud the mind. But wine was not always available. In northern lands where vineyards were rare, monks turned to ale or cider. Whatever grew from their soil, they transformed into drink. Food and drink were never simply about survival. They were woven into ritual, into gratitude. To eat was to pray with the body. To drink was to honor creation. And yet, not all monks lived alike. Wealthier abbeys in France or Italy sometimes dined with more variety, cheeses, eggs, and even delicacies like figs or almonds. But poorer houses, especially in Northern Europe, endured much harsher diets. Thin stews, coarse bread, and perhaps nothing more. Life in the monastery reflected the landscape itself. Even so, the monks held to their fasts. At certain times of year, like Lent, their meals grew even more austere. No meat, no dairy, sometimes little more than beans and bread. Imagine the hunger, the growl in the belly as prayers stretched long into the evening. Yet to the monks, hunger itself was a teacher, a constant reminder of sacrifice. And in the silence of the dining hall, the taste of even a small crust became sharper, deeper, more meaningful. Hunger made every mouthful sacred. Still, there were moments of feasting. Holy days and festivals brought joy to the table. Then the monks could taste fish grilled, stews rich with herbs, and bread fresh from the oven. The sound of laughter was still absent, but the air grew lighter. Even in silence, the feast was felt. The weight of hunger lifted for just one day. Season by season, the meals changed. Spring brought herbs, leeks, and onions. Summer yielded beans, fruits, and berries. Autumn filled cellars with grain. Winter reduced them to stored roots and dried fish. The cycle of food mirrored the cycle of prayer. Both rose and fell with the seasons. Both tied the monks to the earth as much as to heaven. And so, through bread and beans, through fish and fasting, the monks of the Dark Ages survived. Not with luxury, but with discipline. Not with plenty, but with faith. Their meals may seem meager to us now, but to them each morsel was a prayer, each bite a lesson, each fast a step closer to God. Some monasteries became famous for their food production. They cultivated vineyards, brewed ales, and raised bees for honey. These abbeys were not just places of prayer, but engines of medieval agriculture. Honey was precious. It sweetened bread, flavored ale, and healed wounds. In a world without sugar, honey was a golden treasure, guarded and cherished. Cheese, too, became a staple. Milk turned into curds and wheels that could last through long winters. Even today, many European cheeses trace their roots back to monastic recipes. These foods were not luxuries to the monks, they were symbols of survival, of ingenuity. The cloister walls hid not only prayer, but also centuries of agricultural innovation. Yet there was always tension. Too much comfort could be seen as sin, too much indulgence as a betrayal of vows. A monk's plate was always measured against his conscience. There are tales of abbots rebuking their monks for eating too well, for savoring too much. Even a spoonful of honey could stir guilt in a heart sworn to simplicity. Still, the human body needs nourishment. Monks were no different. Their labor in the fields, their hours of prayer demanded strength. And so their food, though simple, was carefully balanced. Protein from beans and peas, energy from bread, minerals from herbs and vegetables. Even without knowing the science, the monks created diets that sustained them through centuries. Fasting days reminded them of discipline. Feast days reminded them of joy. Together they wove a rhythm of hunger and fulfillment, silence and prayer. Outside the monastery, peasants often starved. Lords and soldiers feasted while the poor went hungry. Within the walls, the monks sought fairness, every man equal at the table. The silence of their meals was itself a protest against gluttony. While nobles boasted with banquets, monks let their food whisper of humility. Their meals were scripture without words, prayers without sound. To chew bread slowly was to meditate on eternity. To swallow beans was to remember the earth that gave them. To us, it may seem austere, but for them, this very austerity was freedom. Freedom from craving, from excess, from the endless hunger of the world outside. And yet, hunger never fully left them. It lingered as a companion, sharpening faith, making each morsel of bread taste like grace itself. We might imagine these monks lived joyless lives, but that would be a mistake. Their joy was hidden in the small things: a warm loaf, a sip of wine, a handful of berries in summer. Joy in silence, joy in simplicity, joy in the knowledge that nothing was wasted, nothing taken for granted. Every meal was a reminder, all is gift. Some abbeys became so skilled at farming that they produced more than they needed. Their surplus fed the poor, travelers, even armies passing through. Thus, monastic food was not only sustenance for the monks, it was sustenance for whole communities, a quiet generosity that shaped Europe for centuries. The monks ate less than most nobles, yet they gave more. Their tables, though plain, became symbols of charity. Their bread became bread for others. And so, the story of what monks ate is not just about beans and bread. It is about discipline, humility, charity, and survival. Food that nourished not only bodies, but souls. But let us step even deeper into the meaning of food itself. For the monks, eating was never separate from faith. Each meal was an act of obedience, each taste a reminder of God's providence. They believed the body was a vessel, fragile and temporary. Food kept it alive, but prayer gave it purpose. To eat without prayer was to miss the point entirely. Meals were often taken in silence while one monk read aloud from scripture. Bread and beans entered the body as words entered the soul. It was a rhythm, a harmony of sound and silence, word and food. The table became as sacred as the altar, and when the meal ended, nothing was wasted. Crumbs were gathered, leftovers given to the poor, for waste was a sin and gratitude a duty. This way of eating may seem foreign to us today in an age of abundance, but in the Dark Ages, food was never guaranteed. Gratitude was born from scarcity. Through discipline, monks found freedom. Through hunger, they found meaning. Through silence, they found a feast no nobleman could ever taste. For in their silence, food spoke. It told them they were fragile. It told them they were dependent. It told them that life itself was borrowed, a gift given daily. And so the beans, the bread, the fish, and the honey became more than food. They became symbols of eternity, tasted in small bites. The Dark Ages were often called an age of hunger, but inside the monastery walls, that hunger was transformed, from despair into devotion, from need into prayer. Even in times of famine, when fields lay barren, the monasteries endured. Their discipline turned scarcity into survival. Their faith turned hunger into strength. Their food shaped their faith, and their faith shaped their food. In that endless circle, the monks endured the centuries, quietly nourishing Europe. And so, when we ask, what did monks eat during the Dark Ages? The answer is more than a list of foods. It is a story of discipline, of silence, of gratitude. A story where every meal was a prayer, where hunger was not an enemy, but a companion, where even the smallest crumb carried the weight of eternity. The Dark Ages may seem far away, but perhaps their lessons are not. To eat with gratitude, to waste nothing, to find meaning in the simplest of meals. In a world of excess, their austerity feels almost radical, their discipline a quiet challenge echoing across centuries. What monks ate was not just food, it was philosophy, a way of life, a silent sermon spoken through bread and beans. And so their story lingers. Every monastery ruin, every ancient recipe, every crumb of old bread whispers their vow: simplicity, silence, survival. When we taste bread today, or sip wine, or share a meal in silence, we echo those monks of the Dark Ages who made food a prayer and prayer a meal. This is what monks ate. This is how they lived. This is how silence was broken, not with words, but with bread.